There's a clay tablet sitting in a locked archive inside the British Museum. You can't see it, researchers can't access it, and when the last scientist who studied it tried to publish his findings, his funding disappeared, his position was quietly eliminated, and the only copy of his data was stolen from his home. Not destroyed, stolen. Someone wanted what he found. What was on that tablet? A star map. Not a myth, not a religious symbol. A working navigational star map, accurate to a precision we only achieved with satellite imaging in the 20th century. And it doesn't just show stars, it shows a route. 47 star systems, plotted in sequence, moving across the galaxy and ending here, on Earth. Someone mapped a journey to us, and they left it in cuneiform, buried under Nineveh 5,000 years ago. That's not the disturbing part. The disturbing part is what's written at the destination. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand something about human origins that mainstream science has actively chosen to ignore. And you're going to understand why they've chosen to ignore it. This isn't ancient aliens content. I'm not going to show you blurry cave paintings and call them spaceships. What I am going to show you is a documented archaeological anomaly, a physical object translated by credentialed linguists, cross-referenced with modern astrophysics that produces results no one has been able to explain away. We're going to look at the raw data, the actual translations, the star coordinates, the probability math, and then we're going to ask the question every academic in this field refuses to ask out loud. If the Sumerians didn't discover this themselves, who gave it to them? Let's establish the baseline, because this is where the contradiction becomes impossible to dismiss. The standard academic timeline says the Sumerians emerged around 4500 BCE in southern Mesopotamia. No telescopes, no satellites, naked eye astronomy only. The moon, the visible planets, the brightest stars. That's the ceiling. That's the limit of what they should have known. Now, here's what they actually knew. They knew about Uranus and Neptune, planets invisible to the naked eye, not officially discovered by Western science until 1781 and 1846, respectively. They described the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter with enough detail to distinguish it from the planetary orbits around it. They calculated the length of a solar year within minutes of our modern measurement. They recorded that Earth was spherical and rotating over 4,000 years before Copernicus. The mainstream explanation for all of this is coincidence or misinterpretation. But here's the thing about that explanation. It requires you to believe that a civilization with no optical instruments accidentally got every single one of these details right. Not approximately right, not directionally right, precisely right. And the Sumerians themselves never claimed credit for any of it. In their own texts, across thousands of clay tablets, they say the same thing over and over. The knowledge came from the Anunnaki, beings who descended from the sky. Modern scholars call this mythology, but then the tablet from Nineveh shows up and mythology suddenly has coordinates. The tablet was excavated in 1849 by Austin Henry Layard during his dig at the ruins of ancient Nineveh in modern-day Iraq. It became part of what's now called the Library of Ashurbanipal, one of the most significant archaeological discoveries in history, containing over 30,000 clay tablets covering administrative records, religious texts, legal codes, and astronomical observations. Most of those tablets are publicly accessible. Most of them have been translated, studied, published. This one was catalogued, stored, and effectively forgotten for a century. When linguists returned to it in the 1970s, they found something that didn't fit the established framework. The tablet contains a star chart, 47 distinct star systems, each marked with a specific symbol. 46 of those symbols translate to the same thing. Life exists here. The 47th symbol, the one marking our own solar system, translates differently. 3 words, roughly. They came here. Now, before you call that a metaphor, astronomers who analyzed the star coordinates on the tablet found that the coordinates don't match symbolic placements. They don't correspond to mythological constellation patterns. They correspond to real star systems, plotted with 3-dimensional spatial accuracy.
stars that require knowledge of parallax and stellar depth to locate, a concept we didn't formalize until the 19th century. Several of the systems listed on the tablet are not visible from Earth without advanced magnification. We only confirmed their existence in the last 100 years. The Sumerians mapped them 5,000 years ago. In 1981, a linguist named Dr. Werner Stein published the first serious peer-reviewed analysis of the star chart tablet. His credentials were solid, his methodology was documented, his conclusion was careful. He didn't use the word extraterrestrial. He simply argued, based on the coordinate data, that the Sumerians had received real astronomical information from an external source. The implication was obvious enough. Within 2 years, funding cut, university position eliminated, tablet removed from public display, placed in restricted archives, access requiring institutional clearance, which is, according to researchers who've tried, almost never granted. The official reason was preservation concerns. The clay was fragile. Here's the problem with that explanation. Dozens of Sumerian tablets in significantly worse condition remain on permanent public display in the same museum. The difference between those tablets and this one isn't fragility, it's what they say. In 2003, a retired NASA orbital mechanics engineer named Robert Harrington, a man who had spent 40 years calculating trajectories for deep space missions, obtained high-resolution scans of the tablet through independent channels. He knew real astronomical data. He knew what accurate star mapping looked like. His conclusion after analysis: the coordinates were genuine. The stars existed. The map was accurate to a degree requiring satellite imaging and computer modeling. But he found something Stein had missed. The 47 systems weren't randomly distributed. They were organized by distance from a central point. That point wasn't Earth. It was a star system approximately 1,200 light-years away in the constellation we now call Lyra. The Sumerians had a name for it: Nibiru Antu, the origin point, the home of the Anunnaki. And the 47 systems weren't just a catalog. They formed a route, a sequential path through the galaxy, moving from Nibiru Antu through 46 other systems, each marked as containing life, and ending at our sun, ending at us. 2 months after Harrington went public with preliminary findings, his home was broken into. Nothing stolen except one thing: his external hard drive, 15 years of research on the tablet. Backups stored separately were also accessed and wiped. A colleague in Germany had received partial data before the theft. That colleague continued the work quietly. What they found next is what changes everything. Because the route through those 47 systems isn't just a map of stars with life. 3 of those systems have annotations, specific notes written on the margins of the tablet. And those notes don't describe planets or atmospheres or distances. They describe what happened when the Anunnaki arrived there. We're getting to that, but first, you need to understand what they were actually doing on this route. Because if you understand the mission, the annotations make a very different kind of sense.
6 additional tablets, scattered across separate Sumerian excavation sites, reference the same 47 star systems. Different perspectives, different contexts, same stars. One tablet describes the planets orbiting several of these systems. Another records atmospheric compositions. A third includes distance measurements, calculated in a unit that, when converted to modern terms, closely matches the light year, a concept we didn't develop until Einstein's theories in the early 20th century. The Sumerians had a word for the distance light travels in a year. Think about that. In 2011, data from the Kepler Space Telescope, NASA's mission specifically designed to find Earth-like planets in habitable zones, confirmed exoplanets in multiple star systems listed on the Sumerian tablet. Dr. Amelia Shao, a researcher involved with cross-referencing Kepler data, ran the numbers. Of the 47 systems on the tablet, 32 had confirmed planets as of 2015. Of those 32, 18 were in the habitable zone. Hit rate, over 50%. Random star selection produces habitable zone planets in less than 5% of cases. The Sumerian map wasn't random, it was curated. Whoever made it had already surveyed the galaxy and filtered for the most viable candidates. They weren't exploring, they were executing a program. Now, the three systems with unusual notes. One system, in the region we now call Aquila, carries a note that translates roughly as "those who refused the descent." A second, in Cygnus, "sealed by the council." A third, in Orion, the briefest and the most unsettling, "the warning was not heard." If you read the Sumerian texts at face value, something academics are increasingly reluctant to do, the picture that emerges is this. The Anunnaki weren't running a single mission. They were part of a coordinated, multi-system operation, a galaxy-spanning effort to identify, contact, and in some cases modify worlds capable of supporting intelligent life. And in at least 3 cases, they encountered resistance, civilizations that said no, worlds that were quarantined, a warning that arrived too late. Which raises a question that mainstream science will not ask. What happened on the worlds that said yes? According to the Sumerian texts, we did. The tablets describe in explicit language a process of genetic modification, the mixing of what they call divine essence with existing hominid biology, the creation of a hybrid species, purpose-built for labor. Their word for where this happened, the house of creation. Modern evolutionary biology notes that Homo sapiens appeared roughly 200,000 years ago, genetically distinct from every other primate, with anomalies in our DNA that have never been adequately explained by natural selection alone. We have genetic sequences that appear nowhere else in the biological record, sequences that should have taken millions of years to develop and appear to have emerged almost instantaneously. The Sumerians explain this. Mainstream science calls it a rapid evolutionary leap and moves on. In 2018, astronomers detected unusual luminosity fluctuations from the star system the Sumerian tablet identifies as Nibiru Antu, the origin point in the Lyra constellation. The fluctuations didn't match any known natural stellar phenomenon. Independent researchers who analyzed the light variation patterns found something the official reports didn't mention. When the fluctuations were converted to binary sequences, they produced repeating mathematical structures, prime number patterns, the kind of signals SETI has been searching for as indicators of intentional communication. The story appeared briefly in independent science publications, then disappeared. No follow-up, no official investigation, no explanation. The Sumerian tablet also includes a timeline, cycles of time marked with a specific symbol.
One cycle in particular, a period of roughly 3,600 years, marked with the symbol that translates as return. The Sumerians believed whoever made this map operated on a cycle, that they would come back. The last cycle, by the tablet's own chronology, places the previous return at approximately 1600 BCE, coinciding with the collapse of Bronze Age civilizations across the Mediterranean, the disappearance of entire cultures, catastrophic disruptions that historians still struggle to attribute to a single cause. By the math, the next return falls within the next few centuries, possibly sooner. The tablet includes a description of the conditions that would precede it. Humanity would have developed the ability to see the stars as they truly are. We would have mapped exoplanets, identified habitable zones, reached a level of technological development where contact was possible. We have done all of that. Every single condition on that list, checked. Here is what we can say with certainty. A clay tablet exists, physically, verifiably, containing an accurate star map of systems the Sumerians had no means to observe. The coordinates are real. The stars exist. Modern astronomy confirms the habitable zones the map prioritizes. The probability that this accuracy is coincidental has been calculated at less than 1 in 10 million. The researcher who first formally analyzed it lost his career. The physical tablet is locked in restricted archives. A second researcher had his data stolen. And in 2018, the star system the tablet identifies as the point of origin began producing structured electromagnetic signals. Now, You can call this pseudoscience. You can call it ancient mythology misinterpreted by credulous researchers. But here is what you cannot do. You cannot explain how a civilization with no optical instruments produced a three-dimensional star map of systems they couldn't see. You cannot explain why a research tablet was removed from public access while physically inferior tablets remained on display. And you cannot explain a 50+% habitable zone hit rate from a 5,000-year-old clay document. And you cannot explain what those three annotations mean: the refusal, the quarantine, and the unheard warning if the Anunnaki were purely mythological. Because myths don't have coordinates. Myths don't get their data confirmed by the Kepler Space Telescope. Myths don't get their researchers robbed. The Sumerians told us exactly who made us, where they came from, and when they planned to return. We decided to call it a story. Maybe that was the point. Maybe that was always the point.
But here's what the star map doesn't explain, and what the Sumerian texts actually do. Because buried inside their creation accounts is something that modern geneticists are only now starting to take seriously: a step-by-step description of a biological process that matches gene splicing methodology. Almost exactly. That's the next video. And if you understood what we just covered here, you're going to want to see where that leads. Because the route on the star map ends at Earth. But the genetic record suggests the mission didn't end when they arrived. It's still running.